For peace of mind when backing up, the Furrion Vision S vehicle observation system is an excellent option. This is going to be a complete package for everything you need. It comes with the 5-inch monitor, 2 side marker cameras, as well as the rear camera. So with this system, one of the great things about it is everything is already paired right out of the box, which means we can get straight to installation. So let's do it. So the first step is to identify if the trailer is pre-wired or not. As you'll see, this one is. We already have the housing here. If it were not, you have a few different options. One is you can use the camera and housing that comes in the package, be able to mount that here, and then we'll essentially splice into this marker light for power. The other option would be to get a different camera that actually replaces this marker light and has the camera off to the side. But as I mentioned, with what we have here on the 2025 Pullman 17B, because it already has the prep, it's going to be nice and easy for us. All we're going to do is remove the 4 screws here in the housing. We will then remove these 4 screws in the housing that came with our kit. We will take this center camera and put it right in the housing on the 17B. So with our camera successfully removed from the housing that came with our kit, we're then just going to connect the camera to the pre-wiring here in the housing that was already installed. You should hear a little snap. Just as a note, it is a pretty tight fit up here, so you'll have to play with the wires to be able to tuck them up. You just kind of have to push them into the housing. Make sure nothing is pinched. And once you have a good fit, you can then put it in place. We'll take our 4 screws and we'll screw in the camera. So with the camera body mounted inside the housing, we're then going to adjust the camera. We're gonna just kind of go by eye at first here. They recommend between 0 and 50 degrees. Once we think we have it in a pretty good spot, we can then screw on the antenna. And the next step is to go inside, plug in the monitor, and see what we see. Okay, with our camera installed, now it is time to hook up the 7-way to the tow vehicle. And then we have to make sure that our lights are set to running lights on. If you have it on auto, like a lot of people do, unfortunately during the day, your camera's not gonna work because it's just not going to have power. So you wanna make sure we set that to running lights on. And then we will simply plug our monitor into the 12-volt power port, let it turn on, and voila, there is our rear camera. With our rear observation camera installed, now it is time to move on to the side camera. So just as a tip, sometimes the silicone will kind of cover the lens cover here, and if that is the case, you'll just take a flathead screwdriver and just kind of peel that away to allow the lens cover to come off. You'll see this one came off pretty easy. Next, we're just gonna cut the silicone right around the housing here. You just wanna be sure that you're going to be very careful because you don't want to nick up the aluminum or the fiberglass siding of the RV. So very slowly cut. If anything, you wanna put a little bit of downward pressure so that way it's not cutting out around to the side. Next, we're gonna remove the screws holding the housing to the RV. And if necessary, just kind of peel it off using a flathead screwdriver. But in this case, we did a pretty good job with our cut. With the housing off and the wires exposed, we need to take the connectors out of the RV so we can access them. So you're gonna try to do it nice and carefully. You can use a screwdriver to kind of grab in there and fish a little bit, but we just wanna be very careful when we're taking them out that we don't cut the sheathing here on the RV opening itself because that metal is going to be pretty sharp. And then with our connectors out, we are going to just cut the wires as close as possible. All right, now we are going to strip the wires. Now, it is important to identify which one is power, which one is ground. In our case, we went ahead and tested it with the voltmeter, and the green is going to be power, the white ground. Also, you'll see that we have 2 of each. It may be that you only have 1 of each, just depends on the RV and how they wired it. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and strip them down. So next, before we wire our camera to anything, what I recommend doing is just taking off this rear gasket and actually just taking it and feeding it through and putting it right here on our trailer. That way we don't forget. It's a common and easy thing to forget. Then you basically have to go through all your wiring again, which is something we don't want to have to do. Once that's on there, we then just need to pop off our cover here. So we're just going to take our flathead screwdriver, just kind of pop that off like so. And you'll notice that there are 2 screws right here. We actually want to remove those 2 screws in order to remove the camera body from the rest of the marker light, because you'll see in just a moment, in order to attach this, we need to access these 2 screw holes. All right, now before we hook up the wiring, I do recommend just making sure that you have it in the right orientation, making sure your camera is going to be facing in the correct direction. Then we're going to hook up the camera here. So a couple different things. You'll see that this one comes with essentially 4 different wires. You'll have 2 essentially power wires. So you're going to have power to the camera as well as power to the lamp itself, the marker light. And then you will also have your ground, which is going to be black, and then the trigger signal, which is yellow. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 power, the red and the brown. We're going to essentially tie those ones together. We're going to connect it to the green because, again, the green was our power on this trailer. The ground is going to go to the white. And then the trigger signal we're actually not going to use on a travel trailer. This is mainly meant for a motorhome. And what that will do is when you turn on the blinker of a motorhome, it will then turn on your side camera so you have that side vision. On a travel trailer, however, it's not wired for the blinker on your front marker light, and therefore your camera just won't turn on. So with everything wired up, now before we go any further, we want to give it a test just to make sure everything is working the way it should. So we're just going to take the camera housing, slide that back in, and then we're going to plug our tow vehicle back into the 7-way, check our monitor, and make sure the camera's working. Okay, so we plugged in our tow vehicle, we have our running lights on, and we're going to change to the left side. And look at that. I have someone holding it back there for me, but as you can see, it is working just fine. So now that we saw it worked, we just removed our camera again and disconnected from the tow vehicle. Now we're going to take our gasket and push that up and just kind of set it back here for now. Mainly because we're going to use the tape and tape everything up, and we just don't want the diameter to get too big where we struggle to get that through. So let's start taping. Next, we're going to carefully push the wires back into the body of the RV. Again, trying to make sure, especially now, that we're not cutting anything on the way in. Now, as you will notice, the old marker light had 2 screw holes. This one has 4. So we're going to kind of line it up the best we can here where we have somewhat of a flat surface. And then we're going to use number 6 3/4 flathead screws and drive them in all 4 holes. Now, we're going to get it started with our impact driver here, but once we get in far enough, we're actually going to use just a hand tool to get it in the rest of the way, because again, we don't want to strip anything out and we don't want to break the plastic. Now that we have this nice and secure, we're going to reattach the camera. I do just want to say that you may have to adjust the 2 furthest screws, because with the aluminum rib trailers and because all the curvature, it tends to warp this part a little bit, and you kind of have to play with it a little bit to get the camera to fit on just right. But I went ahead and adjusted it, and now we should be able to just slide this guy on. With our camera reattached, we're just going to take our 2 screws that we used to take the camera off, reinsert those again, just by hand, nothing that has to be too crazy tight. And once those are on, we will reattach our lens cover. Okay, then with our side markers fully attached and our camera attached as well, now we're just going to use some silicone and seal it just to make sure we keep water out. Okay, so we did the exact same steps on the other side of the RV, so we have now installed both of our side cameras, and we're going to give it one final test. So you will see here is the rear camera, still have my ladder in the way. If we take a look at the right side, there we are. If we take a look at the left side, there it is. Everything is up and running. Final thing is just how you want to mount your monitor. You have a few different options that come with our package. One is going to be this one, which just kind of sits, on the dash or down in the center console. You'll see on the back, you have a socket for the ball mount to fit into. You'll simply pop that in and you can, again, either have it sitting here, or if you'd prefer to mount it to the windshield, you can do that as well, and just mount it wherever you see fit. Now, if your RV is prepped for side cameras, it does make installation that much quicker. All you have to do is pop off the lens cover. There will be 2 screws you can remove that will let this dummy piece right here slide out. You will then take the camera, and you can take that camera piece, slide it in, reinsert the 2 screws, put the lens cover back on, and that's all there is to it. Just like that, we have observation around our entire RV, and we can now back up with peace of mind. If you're interested in one of these, you see how easy it is to install, simply stop by our local Camping World or visit campingworld.com.